In my 35 years on the bench here in Providence, Rhode Island, I've seen arrogance walk through that courtroom door more times than I can count. But when a young man in a $5,000 suit actually threatened me in my own courtroom, subscribe right now because what happened next taught both of us a lesson neither will ever forget. I'm Judge Frank Caprio, and let me tell you something. Sometimes the people who act the toughest are the ones hurting the most. The case was straightforward on paper. Multiple parking violations in a handicapped zone outside a luxury shopping district on Federal Hill. 6 tickets over 3 months, each one unpaid, totaling nearly $1,200 in fines. The registered owner was a 23-year-old named Brandon Whitmore, and when I saw the address listed, one of those waterfront penthouses overlooking Narragansett Bay, I knew money wasn't the issue here. Something else was going on. When Brandon walked into my courtroom, everything about him screamed entitlement. Designer suit that cost more than most people make in a month. Shoes so polished I could see the reflection of the courtroom lights. Hair styled with that calculated carelessness that probably took an hour and $100 at some exclusive salon. But it was his expression that caught my attention. Not nervousness, not remorse, not even the fake politeness most people put on when they're facing a judge, just boredom mixed with barely concealed contempt. He didn't walk to the defendant's table. He strutted, like he was doing me a favor by showing up at all. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, keeping my voice measured and professional the way I always do, "you're here today regarding 6 parking citations for illegally parking in handicapped zones. Do you understand the charges?" He shrugged at me. "Yeah, I understand them, and I think they're ridiculous. Those spots are always empty anyway. Nobody uses them." I felt my jaw tighten. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've learned to control my initial reactions, but that statement hit a nerve. My own mother spent her final years in a wheelchair. I know exactly what those blue-painted spaces mean to people who need them. "Let me ask you something," I said, and I could hear the edge creeping into my voice. "Do you think those spots are reserved just for decoration? Do you think we paint them blue because it's pretty?" "Look, Your Honor," and the way he said "Your Honor" dripped with sarcasm. "I was running late for important meetings. The regular parking was full. I was only there for a few minutes each time. It's not like I hurt anybody." Inspector Quinn, standing at his usual spot near the bench, shifted his weight. I caught his eye for just a second, and I could see he was thinking what I was thinking. This young man had no idea how the world worked outside his privileged bubble. "You were ticketed 6 times over 3 months, I said, looking down at the citations. "That's not a few minutes. That's a pattern of deliberately ignoring the law because you think it doesn't apply to you. Whatever, just tell me how much I owe so I can write a check and get out of here. I've got actual important things to do today." Hit that like button if you've ever encountered someone who needed a reality check because what was about to unfold would crack this young man's armor in ways he never saw coming. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Maria Santos, stood up. "Your Honor, given the defendant's attitude and the repeated nature of these violations, the state recommends the maximum fine of $3,000 plus mandatory community service." Brandon laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "3,000? That's what I spend on a weekend in Newport? You think that's going to teach me a lesson?" And that's when he made his mistake. That's when his arrogance crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. "You know what? Maybe I should call my father. He plays golf with the mayor. I'm sure we can make this whole thing disappear with one phone call, unless you want to be reasonable and just dismiss this nonsense right now." The courtroom went silent. Everyone, Inspector Quinn, the prosecutor, the clerk, the handful of people waiting for their own cases, everyone froze. Because what Brandon Whitmore just did was threaten a sitting judge. He just tried to use his family's connections to intimidate me into dismissing his case. I took a deep breath. My father came to this country with nothing. He worked 16-hour days in a factory so his children could have opportunities he never had. He taught me that nobody, I don't care how much money they have or who they know, is above the law. That's the promise of America. That's what justice means. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, and my voice was cold now, all the warmth drained out, "I want you to think very carefully about what you just said to me. Are you attempting to influence this court's decision by threatening to use your family's political connections?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far, or maybe he was just surprised that I didn't fold immediately like everyone else in his life probably did. "I'm just saying I have options," he said, but his voice was less confident now. "Let me tell you about your options," I replied. "You can apologize right now for attempting to intimidate this court. You can show some respect for the legal process, and you can explain to me why I shouldn't hold you in contempt, which would mean spending time in jail, not just paying a fine. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking?" Share this video if you believe everyone deserves to be treated equally under the law, regardless of their bank account, because what happened next would either break through this young man's arrogance or confirm everything wrong with him. Brandon shifted his weight. His confidence was cracking, but pride is a powerful thing, especially when you've spent your whole life being told you're special, you're better, you're above the rules that govern ordinary people. Fine, he said, and his voice had an edge now. I apologize. Can we just get this over with? But I wasn't done. Something in my gut told me there was more to this story. In 35 years, you develop an instinct for when someone is hiding something behind their attitude. And this young man's aggressive arrogance felt like armor protecting something vulnerable underneath. Why do you park in handicapped zones, Mr. Whitmore? And I want the real answer, not the excuse about being in a hurry. I already told you. No, you gave me an excuse. I'm asking you why. 6 times over 3 months, always in handicapped zones, always outside the same shopping area. What's in that shopping area? For the first time, Brandon looked uncomfortable. Not angry, not arrogant, uncomfortable. Like I'd touched on something he didn't want to talk about. There's a bunch of stores there. I don't know. Different places. Inspector Quinn, I said, what businesses are located at that address? Quinn pulled out his phone and looked it up. Let's see, Judge. There's a Nordstrom, a jewelry store, a couple of restaurants, and there's a medical supply store, East Side Medical Equipment. I watched Brandon's face when Quinn said medical supply store. He flinched, just slightly, just for a second, but I saw it. Mr. Whitmore, were you going to the medical supply store? That's none of your business. Actually, it is my business. You're in my courtroom, and I'm trying to understand why an intelligent young man would repeatedly break the law in ways that could result in serious consequences. So I'll ask you again, were you going to the medical supply store? The silence stretched out. Brandon was staring at the floor now, his arms crossed, that expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume he was wearing to play a part. Before I tell you what he said next, leave a comment about a time when you judged someone too quickly, because I was about to learn a lesson about assumptions and the masks people wear to hide their pain. Yes, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I was going to the medical supply store. Why? Because my mother needs equipment, okay? She has ALS. Lou Gehrig's disease. She's dying and she needs all this equipment. Wheelchairs, lifts, breathing machines, all of it. And I'm the one who has to go pick it up and bring it to her because my father won't. He's too busy playing golf with the mayor. The courtroom atmosphere changed instantly. Inspector Quinn's expression softened. The prosecutor sat down slowly. I felt my throat tighten because suddenly this wasn't about a spoiled rich kid anymore. This was about a young man watching his mother die and lashing out at the world in his pain. Why don't you use regular parking? I asked, and my voice was gentle now. Because I can't handle it, he said, and now I could hear the emotion cracking through his carefully constructed facade. I can't handle walking past all those normal people doing their normal shopping while I'm in there picking up equipment to keep my mother breathing for another week. I park as close as I can, I run in, I get what I need, and I leave before I fall apart. And I know that's wrong. I know I'm taking spaces from people who need them, people like my mother, and that makes it even worse. But I can't. His voice broke. This 23-year-old man in his $5,000 suit put his hands over his face and his shoulders started shaking. What am I going to do with you? That's what I was thinking, but it wasn't the same question I'd been asking myself 10 minutes earlier. 10 minutes ago, I was dealing with an entitled brat who needed to be put in his place. Now I was looking at a scared kid who was losing his mother and didn't know how to cope with the pain. I thought about my own mother in her final years. I thought about how helpless I felt watching her decline, how angry I was at the universe for taking her from us too soon. I thought about all the ways grief makes us behave in ways we wouldn't normally behave. Mr. Whitmore, look at me, I said softly. He slowly lowered his hands. His eyes were red. All that arrogance, all that swagger, all that threatening talk about calling his father, it was gone. What was left was just a young man in terrible pain. How long has your mother been sick? 2 years. She was diagnosed when I was 21, right after I graduated college. The doctor said she might have 5 years, but she's declining faster than they expected. She can't walk anymore, can barely speak, and my father acts like she doesn't exist. He throws money at the problem, nurses, equipment, whatever, but he won't look at her, won't talk to her, so it's just me. Do you have siblings? A sister, but she lives in California. She can't handle it. Seeing Mom like this, it's too much for her, so she stays away. And you stay. Someone has to. Mom spent her whole life taking care of us. The least I can do is be there for her now. Subscribe to this channel if you believe there's more to every story than what we see on the surface, because what I was about to do would either help this young man or fail him completely, and I wasn't sure which. I looked at the citations again: 6 parking tickets in handicapped zones, $1,200 in fines, a pattern of illegal behavior that under normal circumstances would result in heavy penalties and community service. But these weren't normal circumstances. This was a young man providing end-of-life care for his dying mother while his family fell apart around him. Mr. Whitmore, you were wrong to park in those spaces. You understand that, don't you? Yes, sir, I understand. Those spaces exist for people who need them. People like your mother. When you take them, you're making life harder for people who are already struggling. That's not acceptable, no matter what you're going through personally. I know, you're right. However, I continued, and I saw him look up at me with something like hope in his eyes, I also understand that you're in an impossible situation. You're 23 years old, you're watching your mother die, and you're apparently doing it without much support from your family. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it explains it. I thought about justice and mercy. I thought about what my father would want me to do. I thought about what kind of judge I want to be, what kind of man I want to be. Here's what's going to happen. I'm reducing your fines to $600, payable in monthly installments if you need. But that's not the important part. The important part is what comes next. Brandon was watching me intently now, that mask of arrogance completely gone. You're going to complete 40 hours of community service, but not just any community service. You're going to volunteer at the ALS Association of Rhode Island. You're going to spend time with other families going through what you're going through. You're going to help them, support them, learn from them. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn that you're not alone in this. I could see tears running down his face now. Not tears of shame, but tears of relief. Relief that someone finally understood. Relief that someone finally looked past his armor and saw the hurt underneath. Furthermore, you're going to get counseling. I'm ordering it as part of your sentence. You need to talk to someone about what you're going through, someone who can help you process this grief and anger before it destroys you. Inspector Quinn will give you a list of grief counselors who specialize in terminal illness and caregiver support. Your Honor, I'm not finished. You're also going to write a letter to your mother, not today, but when you're ready. You're going to tell her everything you wish you could say but haven't been able to, and you're going to read it to her, even if she can't respond, because she deserves to hear how much you love her while she's still here. Hit that like button if you've ever needed someone to show you compassion when you were at your worst, because that's what justice looks like when we remember we're all human beings trying our best in impossible circumstances. Brandon was openly crying now. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for understanding. I'm not doing you a favor, I said firmly. I'm holding you accountable. But I'm doing it in a way that helps you become a better man, not just punishing you for being a hurt one. There's a difference. I looked at the prosecutor. She nodded, understanding what I was trying to do here. Maria Santos had lost her own father to cancer the year before. She knew about grief and how it could make you act in ways you never thought possible. Mr. Whitmore, let me ask you something else. When was the last time you took a break? When was the last time you did something for yourself? Not for your mother, not for anyone else, just for you. He thought about it for a long moment. I don't remember. Months, maybe. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't take care of your mother if you're falling apart yourself. Part of your community service is going to include attending a caregiver support group. You need to be around other people who understand what you're going through. You need to know you're not alone. But your father is dealing with this in his own broken way. That's not your problem to fix. Your job is to take care of your mother and take care of yourself. That's all you can do. You understand me? Yes, sir. I stood up from the bench, something I rarely do, and I walked down to where Brandon stood. Inspector Quinn looked surprised, but he didn't stop me. I walked right up to this young man who'd walked into my courtroom threatening me an hour ago, and I put my hand on his shoulder. Brandon, your mother is lucky to have you. What you're doing, staying with her, caring for her, being present through this nightmare, that takes more courage than most people ever have to show. But you can't do it alone, and you can't do it while you're drowning in anger and pain. Let us help you. Let the ALS Association help you. Let the support groups help you. You hear me? He nodded, unable to speak through his tears. God bless you, son. Take care of yourself so you can take care of your mother. And when this is over, when she's gone and you're grieving and you feel like you'll never be okay again, I want you to remember that you were there for her. You didn't run away like your father. You didn't hide like your sister. You stayed. That's what love looks like. I walked back to the bench. The courtroom was completely silent except for the sound of Brandon crying. Inspector Quinn handed him some tissues. The prosecutor had tears in her eyes. Even the clerk, who's seen everything in 20 years, was wiping her face. Share this video with someone who's struggling right now, someone who needs to know that compassion still exists in this world, because we all need that reminder sometimes. After Brandon left with the paperwork for his community service and counseling, after the next cases were called and resolved, after the day wound down, I sat in my chambers thinking about what had happened. That young man walked in wearing arrogance like armor because it was the only way he knew how to protect himself from unbearable pain. And I almost missed it. I almost let my own judgment of his behavior prevent me from seeing the person underneath. That's the danger in this job. After 35 years, you see so many cases that you start making assumptions. Rich kid acting entitled, throw the book at him, someone threatening you, come down hard to maintain respect for the court. Those are the easy answers, those are the safe answers. But justice isn't about easy answers. Justice is about seeing people, really seeing them, and asking yourself what response serves both the law and their humanity. I got a letter 4 months later. It was from Brandon Whitmore. He wrote that he'd completed his community service at the ALS Association and had decided to keep volunteering even after his hours were done. He wrote that the caregiver support group had changed his life, that for the first time in 2 years he didn't feel completely alone. He wrote that he'd read the letter to his mother, and even though she couldn't speak anymore, she'd squeezed his hand, and he knew she heard him. He also wrote that his mother had passed away 3 weeks earlier, peacefully, with Brandon holding her hand. And he wrote that because of the support system I'd connected him with, because of the counseling and the support groups and the other families he'd met through the ALS Association, he was going to be okay. Not okay right away, but okay eventually. Leave a comment and tell me about someone who showed you compassion when you needed it most, because those moments change lives in ways we can't always predict. The truth is, I think about Brandon Whitmore more than most of my cases. I think about how close I came to being just another authority figure who punished him without understanding him. I think about how his arrogance was really just fear, how his threats were really just desperation, how his expensive suit was really just another kind of armor. My father used to say that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind. Always. I try to live by that principle in my courtroom every single day, but I'm human. I make mistakes. I judge too quickly sometimes. I let my own biases cloud my vision. But that day, thank God, I looked past the surface. I saw a hurting kid who needed help more than he needed punishment, and I used the authority of this robe to give him that help while still holding him accountable for his actions. That's the balance. That's what I try to achieve every single day in this courtroom. Accountability without cruelty, consequences without dehumanization, justice with compassion. Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Would you have thrown the book at him when he threatened you? Would you have looked deeper? Would you have tried to find that middle ground between punishment and mercy? I've been doing this for 35 years and I'm still learning, still trying to be better, still trying to honor my father's memory by treating people with the dignity and compassion he showed me every day of his life. Brandon Whitmore walked into my courtroom as a rich brat threatening a judge. He left as a young man who'd been seen, understood, and given the tools to heal. That's what justice can do when we remember that the person standing before us isn't just a case number or a violation. They're someone's son or daughter, someone's story, someone's struggle. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the measure of our humanity isn't how we treat people when they're at their best. It's how we treat them when they're at their worst and most vulnerable. Subscribe to see more stories from my courtroom in Providence, where every case is a chance to make someone's life a little bit better, a little bit more bearable, a little bit more hopeful, because that's what this job is really about. Not parking tickets and fines, people and second chances and the possibility of redemption.